Okay, welcome everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Tech Life Getting Hired series. I'm your host, Greg Greenlee, and tonight we are joined by our guest, Kevin Dious. He's a software engineer at Reddit. Hey, Kevin, how's it going?
Not bad. How about you?
Doing pretty well. So, I want to give people a little bit of background on the Tech Life Getting Hired and kind of why we started this series. The Tech Life Getting Hired was kind of an idea that came out of the big community, just wanting to really try to highlight the black women and black men who are working at some of the top tech companies in the United States, and really getting to hear their story and provide their experiences as a resource back to our community. And so we've done probably about 6 or 7 of these so far, and interviewing various people across different companies, and really, like I said, just getting their perspective and their experience on what it's like to be hired and be an employee, and things around career progression, tips and advice, resume advice, and things like that, and really using that as a good resource for the black women and black men in our community, so they can have something to be ahead of the game, pretty much. So with that being said, once again, thanks, Kevin, for joining us. Just to start off, we're going to just give us a little bit about your personal background. Just tell us who you are, kind of where you're from, your educational background, and then tell us how you got into tech.
Sure. So yeah, again, my name is Kevin, and I am from Athens, Georgia. So my Bulldogs hurt me that national championship game a few weeks ago, but we'll be all right. But, born and raised in Athens, Georgia, and I attended Stanford University for my undergraduate education. I majored in what we call management science engineering. We have different sort of sub focuses, and the one I chose was industrial. They call financial and decision engineering. You can think of it as like industrial engineering is sort of the analogy I kind of give people. But while at Stanford, I did take some programming classes. We back then, dating myself here, obviously I graduated in 2004, but they kind of started. They taught a lot of C programming and things like that. So I took C programming and whatnot, and sort of really kind of fell in love with programming, kind of, I guess, as a kid. So I was always a techie. I was always just sort of computers. I remember my dad, he had these old 486 computers that this guy had built for him to kind of run his office. And I was always on those and sort of mucking around and messing stuff up and figuring out how to fix it. So it was just always part of like who I was. I was always the family tech guy whenever somebody needed something set up. And, that was always me. But so that was sort of, I guess, early on as a kid, it just sort of was what I really loved and was into. So after undergrad, I actually went to Los Angeles to work for a small company. It was called Office Future Systems, and they had a big contract with the LA Department of Water and Power for their online e-procurement system. And I went there to sort of do technology stuff, but then things kind of shifted, and we had to shift more to a business development marketing role. And then unfortunately, that company kind of just didn't make it. So I ended up actually going to law school. I thought I was very interested in intellectual property law issues, and but the real reason I think is my dad has somehow convinced me that going to law school is a good idea. But yeah, so I went to law school, went back home to Georgia, so University of Georgia from 2005 to 2008, and graduated. But I kind of knew after my second year, that's kind of when you really get to explore. And I was doing my internship, and I was just sitting there. I was like, I just don't think I can really do this for the next 30 plus years. And I really just started thinking about what I was interested in, and kind of had my come to Jesus moment and said, you really like software and technology. That's just what you're into. That's why I followed the blogs, and, I was always sort of reading about kind of stuff that was going on. So I made a decision then and there that, I wanted to pursue technology and software, career in that, and reached out to folks at Georgia Tech. And I said, hey, I'm really interested in trying to do computer science. Should I do another bachelor's? Should I do a master's? What do you guys think? And they just, from talking to me, they said, you should apply to the master's program. Yeah, you may need to do some prerequisites before. And so that's basically what I did. I took a year after law school and went to enroll in Georgia State in Atlanta. I was taking classes part-time, and then also applied to the master's. And got in quite a few places and got in. And I got into Georgia Tech, which was my number one choice. And but it was a very interesting path, because I started in France for the first year, kind of got admitted through a special program. So 2 semesters abroad in France, 2 semesters back home in Atlanta, and finished. And I had a gym fellowship that paid for my second year. My sponsor company is Qualcomm down in San Diego, so that's what brought me back to California. And yeah, so I was there for about 2.5 years doing kind of embedded systems work, and then got an opportunity to join a small startup after that in San Diego as well, and was working there called Ubicom, and we were doing sort of drone and high-speed internet via drones, things like that. And then yeah, then this sort of opportunity at Reddit came along. I was kind of job hunting around 2016, interviewed a few places, and then Reddit kind of came along, and thankfully, yeah, they liked me well enough to bring me aboard, and I think it was a great opportunity. I've been here since March, and they're really excited. So it's been a great journey so far.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for that. Thanks for that background information. Tell us a little bit about what Reddit is. I know there's if you're in tech, in some sort of fashion, you probably heard of Reddit, but for those that may have not heard of it, tell us what Reddit is.
Absolutely. Reddit is all about, it's in the social media space, but it's all about online community. So where we're different from, say, a Facebook or a Twitter or Instagram, right? Those are more kind of individualistic, right? You say, hey, everybody, my friends, you could say, here's what's going on in my life. Here's this great meal I'm eating. Here's this awesome trip that I'm on, all this good time. It's kind of very sort of one-way kind of communication direction. Of course, you can post things and people comment, but they're more about sort of expressing yourself personally about, this is me and what's going on. Reddit is very different. You join the site, or you don't have to join. You can kind of be a lurker, as you say, but you find different communities. So maybe you're into football, maybe you follow your favorite team, whether it's the San Diego Chargers, Atlanta Falcons, or maybe you love cooking or what have you. So we have hundreds of thousands of communities that are kind of driven by moderators who, they're volunteers, and they sort of help sort of foster discussion and make sure that their community is, very healthy and active. And so with Reddit, where we say we're kind of different, really pride ourselves on that we're about authentic discussion. Alexis, one of our founders, likes to use a model, like there's the iceberg model. So, in an iceberg, you have what's sort of above the water, right? Which is, what you see, above the water. And so we kind of consider Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Those sites are kind of like that, where this is the stuff that you really want people to see. Whereas Reddit, we kind of say we're kind of that piece of the iceberg that's below the water. So because you can be kind of as anonymous as you want, that allows really authentic discussions when people are real on Reddit, for better or worse. So it's all about community and community-driven discussion and content. And as a result, Reddit becomes a place where a lot of things that become trending on other sites really will break on Reddit first, because the community, people are very active. They post, they talk about it, and then all of a sudden Facebook and others will sort of kind of get picked up there. But it's a great site that's really, at our core, we're about fostering online community, bringing people from around the world together around common interest groups, common topics, and to talk about any and everything they want, and to be open and honest and real about it. So.
Excellent, excellent. And your role as a software engineer, correct?
Yeah, so I'm a software engineer. I work on what we call the anti-evil team. Reddit is a very popular site. We have, I think, over 350 million monthly active users. We're like number 4 in the U.S. in terms of traffic. Number, I think, 7 or 8 in the world according to the Alexa ranking. So because of that, we are a target. People want to sort of spam our site with stuff, and obviously, if we allow that kind of stuff to happen, it creates a negative user experience, and people won't want to come back. Advertisers won't want to advertise with us. So our job is basically to build tools to enable some of our internal teams to kind of fight this stuff. So we have our trust and safety team. There's like the site police. So when we have users who really do kind of step out of bounds and start kind of trolling or sort of being harassing other users, we have mechanisms for that. We have our legal team. We have sort of copyright infringement, kind of stuff, or law enforcement kind of requests. So we build tools to help them. And then we have build tools for our community team. So they work with our moderators to make sure they have a great experience in sort of moderating and running their communities, which we call subreddits. So we kind of build tools for that, and also sort of anti-spam tools and other tools to kind of fight bad content, such as child pornography, things like that, which is unfortunate, but we have to fight that kind of stuff. So we build tools to kind of help, make sure that the site, try to keep all the bad stuff off.
Gotcha. And with LinkedIn and other job sites, there's a lot of times, companies have internal recruiting teams that will actually, kind of seek out candidates on these sites. How did you actually come to hear about the position and then come to interview at Reddit?
Good question. So I have a very actually non-traditional path into the company. I actually have to rewind back to my days in grad school. So I graduated Georgia Tech 2011, and sort of that, I think right before I was graduating, the summer after, they held this thing called a virtual career fair. Idea is that all these employers will kind of come online, you can interact with them, and one of them was the VC firm Andreessen Horowitz. I had a conversation with them. What they do is they have like tech talent recruiters who their job is to sort of help find candidates and place them with portfolio companies and make introductions, basically. And so at the time, we just had a discussion. There's nothing really that was a good fit. They said, well, we'll sort of keep your information on file, right? That line you get. And,
right.
I was like, all right, whatever. So anyway, since then I was working in San Diego, whatever. And roughly like 6 years later, I get an email out the blue. They were like, hey, Kevin, we were going through our files and we came across your information. I was wondering, are you sort of looking and whatnot? And I thought the referral would come from somewhere else, but actually, talking to them, they had actually had my information on file and kept it for all these years. And so, I started to engage with this recruiter. And so what they do is that, they'll say, hey, well, here's a list of all of our portfolio companies. Tell us ones that you think you'd be a good fit for, that you're interested in. And, you give us your resume, and then we'll make an introduction. And so sure enough, I did that. And when they send your resume, it goes to, CTOs, founders, hiring managers. And so, if they like you, and they'll reply back. And so it was a great way to kind of get in and love to, hopefully there are the technical folks out there kind of looking. You have some good contacts there, but they're, and I found I got really good response rates, and it was a really great way to sort of get in versus the standard black hole, apply on our website and maybe you hear back, maybe you don't. But sure enough, I got some interviews through that process, and then one of them was Reddit, and I spoke to our VP engineering, Nick Caldwell, who's a great guy, a very talented brother who came from Microsoft, came to Reddit, and we had a great conversation. And he sort of got me in the loop with the interview process, and I was working with a recruiter. And then, one thing led to another, and they made an offer, and here I am. So,
excellent. And let's talk a little bit about the interviewing process.
Sure.
Kind of walk us through what that was like, whether or not there was a phone screen, a pre-test, were there one-on-one panels, multiple rounds, was there whiteboarding?
Mm-hmm. Sure, I can give some interesting facts. I'm actually on the interviewing sort of committee now, okay. We have trained interviewers, so I've gone through that and actually still going through that. So, so at Reddit, I would say we have a mix of the traditional sort of software engineering type interviews with a little of our own flavor. So, so initially what will happen is you will get sort of reached out to by a recruiter, and you just have sort of a high-level conversation. They'll sort of talk to you, feel you out, but it won't really be that technical. Maybe they'll ask some very, very soft questions, but honestly, they're not technical people. So it'll just be a very much like, we got this resume, we like what we see, how do we sort of have a good read, a good feel on this person, yes or no? So that's your initial contact, and then if they feel good about you, then they will sort of put you in the sort of interview process. So after that, you will have a phone screen, and so I would say kind of your standard 1 hour technical phone screen. So somebody like me would call you, and we would sort of chit chat for about roughly 10 to 15 minutes. We'll talk about sort of your background. I would give sort of a background of me, and then we would sort of shift over to high level technical questions. Just sort of verbally, kind of, are you familiar with this type of data structure, or some type of algorithm, like, hey, walk me through how you would sort of design something to do X, and so we would do that for roughly another, let's say, 15 minutes or so, and then from there you would jump to the coding question. So we'd use a coder pad. It's kind of a shared sort of a coding tool, if you will, where you can write code in the web browser, and then you can run it, execute it. And so you would have roughly, give or take 30, 35 minutes, maybe a little, depends on the question. And then, so after you do that, then, we try to leave, 5 minutes or so for Q&A for you to ask whatever you like, because, we understand this is a two-way process. You're interviewing us as much as we're interviewing you. And so we want to make sure that, you have that opportunity. So I'd say that's pretty, from my experience, it's kind of your standard, technical phone screen process from most other companies. So after that, somebody like me would then fill out my sort of report on you and say, here the thing, here's how the interview went. Here I kind of score you and whatnot, and give a write up, and then from there, I guess the recruiting team will decide whether to bring you on site for a round of on-site interviews. So if you make it to the on-site, then you will have, I think, roughly, you're here for about a day. It's I think you start around 10 a.m. and you go until roughly, I don't know, like 3:34. I think you'll have sort of 3 technical interviews that are all an hour each. So you'll be asked some coding questions. So we allow you to, if you feel comfortable sort of with the computer, you bring your own computer, you can do the coding question that way. We also have, loaner computers, you don't bring it. Or if you're a whiteboarder, you can whiteboard it. It doesn't matter. Our thing is, we want you to be comfortable, however you feel comfortable for doing your technical interview. You do that. And so the kind of the 3 technical interviews are, again, it's a little intro, again, and we kind of talk, but then it's sort of, we get to business, get to the coding. And then we also do what we call, there's a candidate, one of our things is called Ask Me Anything, or AMA. So we would do sort of a candidate AMA, which is really just more of a soft skills interview. We really want to get to know you, and that's sort of where we're different, I think. We have a whole people and culture team, and their job is to really find people that they think are good people who will fit well and fit within the Reddit culture. And so that's kind of this, you're just kind of talking about you and background, and they may ask you some sort of situational questions about how you've worked with other people in the past or things like that, some sort of problem scenario. But it's a really informal kind of interview. You also kind of have a lunch interview, which is, I wouldn't really call it an interview. It's just a more give you a break, eat some good food, just talk like this. And, we'll just sort of, you'll talk to the person, and nothing, any all question you want to ask, there, it's pretty much fair game. And so that's really sort of the process. And it's a not overly crazy, but it's usually kind of one day's worth of interviews. And but I think you end up talking to roughly 5 people. And I think one you'll get kind of a system design question. I think the other 2 technicals are sort of, here are 2 coding problems, kind of code those up and solve them. So and then the candidate AMA. So yep.
Excellent. That's great. That's great to know. That's some inside information that a lot of people aren't privy to. And with saying that, how did you prepare? Because obviously you didn't know, kind of what you were getting into as far as the interviews before you actually got there. So how did you prepare for this interview at Reddit?
Absolutely. I'm going to just be honest, give my honest sort of. I struggled with technical interviewing for a long time. When I was started in 2016, I didn't interview before. I was not doing well. I got to the point. First, I was just struggling with the phone screen. And then after practice, I was getting past the phone screens. And I would get some on-sites, and I wasn't getting it. And then finally, sort of toward the end of 2016, it all started coming together. So I had another offer I got right before the Reddit one. And so I'm just going to give my insight, because technical interviewing sucks. It's not a fun process. It's difficult. But if you put in the work, you can sort of get the offer. So for me, what I realized what I was not doing is that I was not putting in enough effort on the front end to prepare. A lot of you, if you do start even, they will say, oh, you could do some practice problems and all this stuff. And I think they kind of make it seem like, oh, you just do a few problems, whatever, kind of, dust the rust off and then you'll be fine. But it takes work. So I got the point where I was doing, those kind of the Cracking the Coding interview book, which is a very good book. There's, I think, Programming Interview Secrets Exposed. I always kind of tell people, start with that one first. It's kind of a easier book, and it does a good job of really kind of walking you through, how to do those algorithms and kind of type questions. And then once you've gone through that one, Cracking the Coding Interview is a good one. And then there's another book. I can't recall off the top of my head. I'm more than happy to share it. I think something like Algorithm Simplified or something. But that was really good because it really will walk you through a lot of different data structures, kind of give you a really quick, refresher, and then problems to sort of work with those. But for phone screens, I recommend interviewbit.com is a site, and Leak Code. And they have free problems that you can do. And then if you sort of want to do, I think Leak Code has a paid one, kind of paid, you pay like $20 a month. And I think I eventually did that, but really you don't have to do that. So what's great about those sites is that it will give you categorized problems in terms of easy, medium, and hard. And they also time you. And then they also, when you sort of run your solution, you can kind of see, you know, it'll tell you like if you don't sort of do the most optimal way. So even though you may have found a solution that works,
Right.
sort of the more optimal, they'll kind of tell you that, so you can continue to revise that. So those are great sites. And I say for me, I mean, I was at a point, and I was putting in, you know, hour and a half, 2 hours a day, trying to get ready. And I think for me, that's the mistake I was making before. I was like, oh, I'll do 30 minutes here and 15 minutes here. And you really have to do it enough so that when you're in the interview, like the problem solving of it is just second nature. So you're not, you know, so that was a problem for me, like in the early stages. So, and then the way you get to practice, you just have to practice. You have to practice. So that when you see a problem, you know, if you think about it for a little bit, oh yeah, you know, I need to traverse this binary tree, or, you know, some sort of hash table, or using a stack or something. When you've done enough problems, then you start to recognize the patterns. And so that to me is a key. And what I see in candidates when I'm interviewing them on the phone screen, it's like, the ones who sort of struggle and don't do well, you can just tell that they just haven't practiced enough. It's not that they're not good developers, not smart, but you have to practice because you have a limited amount of time, and that's all, you know, it is what it is. So, you know, for me, it was just practice. It's practice. And that, I could just tell the more practice I was doing, I got more confident. And also the good thing about lead code interview, but they'll even time you, so you can see your time and then where you rank in terms of the average sort of person who completed that problem. So, and you start to notice as you practice more, your times come down, and you know you get the solutions a lot faster. They just become second nature. And the final piece of advice I would give, especially with the phone screens, but even with the on-sites, is pick a language that you're comfortable with. You really should do that. I mean, I made this mistake many times where like I was trying to do C++, and I was mainly a C programmer, was trying to do C++, and you know, like you're not as comfortable with the standard libraries and things like that. Those things you got to kind of be second nature, so not losing time. And if you're sort of struggling with the language to pick, I mean, we're a Python shop here. I love Python. I kind of taught myself Python, and that's what I interviewed in toward the latter part. And so scripting languages are good because you can easily write kind of code quickly, and they support all the major data structures you need to sort of solve a problem. And you're not typed like C++, like C, like Java, where, you know, you've got to write int, you know, variable name, equal, you know, do all this stuff where, so the scripting language, I would say, is a sort of a tip. If it'll save you a lot of time, you know, again, we're language agnostic. We don't really care, and most places don't, but, you know, I would say if you're sort of struggling on a language to pick, you might want to lean towards a Python or something scripting, because they have a lot of built-in things you can just leverage. And yeah, so that's sort of my tip, is practice. That was, for me, was the big key. And so it really sort of made the difference. And I could just tell, you know, again, it was in the end of the year in 2016 when I got those offers. But yeah,
right.
Practice, so
yeah. That's excellent advice. I just kind of want to co-sign what you were saying. When I was interviewing earlier in my career, one of the biggest things was just forgetting the basic stuff, right? And even nowadays, I find myself just, you know, for instance, picking up a Linux book and just going back over, you know, some of the basic things, and really being comfortable and confident in that base knowledge that you have, so that when you go into an interview, you know, those things are instantly recalled, and you have that much more that much more confidence in what you're talking about and your abilities, and that just puts you a lot more at ease. I know some people just aren't, you know, they aren't good at interviews, period. But if you just have a little bit more confidence in your knowledge, it'll make you a lot more relaxed. So
absolutely, thanks. That's a big part of it. Like, because I mean, the nerves are going to kick in. Like, it's one thing,
yeah,
you know, like you're having to write code, solve a problem, and you got somebody looking over your shoulder. And you know, you're sort of on the clock. I mean, that's just naturally, I don't care who you are, it's going to sort of kick in. So then on top of that, when you're like, oh, how do I, you know, manipulate this list in Python or C++, or how do I handle this vector? What's that method? You know, then you really start to sort of palm sweat, like it's you start worrying, and then the next thing you know, you're just stuck. And so, yeah, I just can't emphasize enough, like, you got to practice. And you'll just notice that once you do, then it's just figuring out how to do the problem. And once you figure that out, then it's just sort of smooth sailing. So, but yeah, I'm totally with you. Interviewing, it sucks. It's not a technical interviewing, just sucks, and it's unlike any other interviewing where they're just, oh, tell me about a time when you did this, and they care about soft skills. And no, you got to show it on the technical interview. So the only way you can, in my opinion, is you got to practice. So yeah, and it's tough when you're working full-time job too. But,
yeah, definitely. So let's kind of switch over to, what your day-to-day life as an engineer consists of. And I kind of broke this down into categories. And I want to start with like contributing. Like I know for a lot of people, including myself, starting a new job can be kind of daunting. And, even, you wonder how do you fit in? I know, during the interview process, one of the things that I like to tell people when interviewing is, ask the interviewer about their problems, right? And then from there, you can kind of say, well, hey, I've either dealt with that, or, what are some of your pain points? And then you can kind of, look within your skill sets and say, oh, okay, I've done that before. Maybe I can help you out with this. But, for people who haven't done that, and, it's their first, let's say a couple of weeks on the job, you kind of wonder, how do you start, contributing as a team member? So if you could tell me a little bit about, how do you contribute as a team member? What are some of the ways, that you go about putting forth contribution?
Absolutely. So yeah, as I said, I work on the anti-evil team. So we kind of are in an interesting space in the company. In that, so when things are suspicious on the site, or that happen. We're a very popular website, and so things are always sort of happening. So we're heavy on Slack. So a lot of times other teams are always sort of dropping things in the channel. Just today, we had another team member from our community teams saw some suspicious stuff going on with some malicious users and get into accounts. And so one of our things is, we have to do a lot of investigation sometimes. So it's how do you contribute? It's you see that somebody say, hey, can you guys look at this? And you say, okay, I'll take a look. And you dig through some logs. You are looking at code, trying to see kind of just where the issue kind of arises. And that's, kind of a very base level sort of, we all have to pitch in. And so we do that a lot. I would say a good amount on our team. So it's just taking initiative, seeing that there's a problem. Another member from another team who is not a technical person is kind of letting you know what's going on. And so that's one, for sure. Other than that, there's certainly we work. Like I said, we work with other teams, and we have our Jira system is what we use for sort of work and how work is assigned and managed and maintained. Yep. And so you will have your sort of set of assigned tickets, and it's sort of moving forward and getting those done, knocking those out. Code reviews is one. We're growing a really, really fast growing organization, and as a result, the amount of code is exploding. And you're tagging a lot of code reviews, so we use kind of GitHub for all that stuff. But it's taking the time to review somebody else's code, and sometimes you get frustrated because I've had this pull request out for 5-6 days or whatever. But so yeah, I always try to find some time to get do some code reviews I've been tagged on as well. So those are just kind of like low level ways, easy ways to sort of contribute and help out. Let's see. Beyond that, obviously there's the features that I'm working on and developing. And a lot of times that's me meeting with a coworker, a team member. Like yesterday, I had to schedule this meeting so we could kind of with these other teams and come together and just make sure we're all on the same page. And doing that, let's see what else. Design documents we have to do. If you're working on a bigger feature, our process is sort of write it up, and then we have a process for getting that reviewed. And so also there's me sort of contributing on those design doc reviews and things like that. So. And then there's this sort of just whatever's needed. We have a thing. One of our things is sort of act like an owner. So that means that when you see something needs to be done around here, even if it's just physically around the office, just try and do those things. But be a resource for people. We just onboarded one guy on our team recently. Another will be onboarding next Monday. And I remember when I started. My sort of my mentor, if you will, this guy Jack. He was really, really super helpful. Answered every question I had, never complained. And, I've tried to do that for the newer people on our team as well. It's just being a resource. Yeah, we all have a lot of work to do, but just note that, this person, hey, they're new. They don't know the code base like you do. And so be sure to be helpful and to answer their questions and, look over their shoulder. If they, hey, all right, I'll come over there with you and take a look. And, I was helping this guy, we got Aaron on our team. He's a more front end guy. And so this year he's digging into more the back end. So, I was like, hey, let's sit down and I'll help you sort of figure out what's going on. And so it was definitely some of the ways. Yeah.
Excellent. And I think one of the things I think you mentioned is talking about, documentation. I think that's one of the easiest ways to kind of contribute, because everyone hates documenting, right? And if you can even just come in and document a process or document something that hasn't been documented, that's a really good way of just contributing just right off the bat. And I really like what you said about, kind of looking over the shoulder and talking to some of the more senior people to try to, to pick their brains. I know when I started out as a DevOps engineer at the company I'm at now, one thing that my manager, tried to instill in me is to, get with some of the senior development guys, because they know the lay of the land like no one else. And if you want to know, kind of what the pain points are of just their day-to-day work and try to help and help in that aspect, really talk to them and really, get to know, because we deal with very, very complex systems, right? And some of these people, they know it all, right? Or they know a good portion of it. And just to be able to kind of pick their brains and get that information, and even take with, I took a ton of notes during that process, right? And you can actually take those notes and put those into, your documentation system for the next person. I think one of the biggest things with me was coming into an environment, and when you don't know anything and there's not a ton of documentation there to know, even more, is, hey, let me pick the brains of this guy, and this guy, or this person, and to see what they know, and then take that and use that as documentation for the next person. And I think I wrote up something called, Navient. One of our products is called Naviance. Mm-hmm. It's called Naviance onboarding, right? And that just talked about, not even just how all the software components are put together, but just how the infrastructure that the software runs on, and what this server does, and this server does, and this server does, because we didn't have that before. So I think, all those things that you mentioned are definitely great ways of, when you come into the door, you want to find ways to contribute. Those are some of the ways. Excellent.
100%. Yeah, and you're right. I didn't even mention that was one of the things I did. Yeah, just starting the documentation. Yeah, I had to do this little project I was working on, and it was not documented. And yeah, I just wrote this huge wiki. I'm very verbose. I guess the legal background. Yeah, I wrote this very long, detailed wiki. And my manager was like, yeah, that's really, we love your wiki, And I would say absolutely. I know like another team member, this guy Kevin on my team. He started after I did, and so yeah, for the new hires who. The guy just started, and the one that's coming. I mean, he did a whole, kind of onboarding document. Like, he just hit all of us up, say, hey, what do you guys have? And we all gave information. It's a great wiki. I was like, man, I wish this existed when I started.
Right.
That's a great way as well. I agree.
So one of the banes of every IT person existence is meetings. Besides documentation, the next one I would say is meetings. Mm-hmm. How do you stay engaged in meetings? Or, kind of give us some tips and ways that you kind of stay engaged and not only that, but contribute to meetings as well. Because I know that's some people, especially starting off, they can feel like they don't have anything to contribute to a meeting, or that they should kind of play a role and just listen in and just be observant. So if you have any tips around that.
Interesting question. One I would say is make sure you go to the meetings that are really apply to you and that relate to you. I mean, every organization is going to have, you'll see on your calendar, tons and tons of meetings. And I would say, don't feel obligated to go to all of them. Number one, especially because there'll be some you're just like, why am I here? And then, so it's just like, but to the ones that you really should go to and need to go to, I would say try and, to the extent possible, sort of research whatever it is, even if it's a 5-10 minutes, what the meeting is about, what the focus and purpose is. I'll admit I've had times where I just sort of roll up in a meeting and yeah, I probably didn't have much to contribute because I was like really not in the loop like I should have been. So usually, you'll know who organized it and should be able to know why. And if there's some sort of technical problem or something, either, we use Slack here very heavily. So if it's something that you think you might be interested in is related, you could even hit that person up and say, hey, just want to sort of make sure I understand kind of what you need or what's going on. And you can do a little dig in the code yourself or whatever, so that way, yeah, when it's time for that meeting, which, in theory you should have known about, days before at least. I think that's one thing that I sort of, in the past, hadn't done the best with. I'll just kind of show up to the meeting and, yeah, you're right, I have nothing to say and I'm just listening, trying to learn. But I think as a way is to really know what it's about, know what the pain point is, know what the problem is, what is the purpose of this meeting, so that, yeah, you've kind of maybe done a little research into it and digging into the issue. So that way, yeah, if they mention something and then you are familiar with that, then you can sort of say, hey, I looked at that code and here's how it sort of works and here's my thoughts on maybe how we can do a little better. So, but yeah, meetings are meetings. It's tough. I mean,
Yeah.
And that's just sort of, it is the nature of the beast. I mean, you have to collaborate with people. It's very rare you're going to be on any team just in your own silo, in your own world, only writing your own code that only touches your stuff. So, it's just sort of inevitable that you have to go to them. But I think it's just really being abreast about what the meeting is about, doing a little kind of pre legwork. If it involves some code, like kind of getting yourself sort of familiar with that code. And yeah, even just reaching out to the organizer and if any question you might have ahead of time, they can answer, or something like that. Or even they can just tell you some things that you might want to kind of look into before the start of the meeting. So.
Excellent. And and still kind of following this kind of day to day as an engineer at Reddit. Tell me, how does your team? I know you mentioned you all use Slack, but how do you all collaborate when you're kind of faced with coding challenges? Is it I know you say you use Slack, but are there other tools or other mechanisms and how you collaborate?
I'll admit we're pretty sort of lean and not too many processes. So it'll be, sometimes it's just, hey, man, you got 5 or 10 minutes. Can we go to the whiteboard or can I come? I've done that quite a bit sometimes because, you could go Slack, you can go back and forth all day, but it's kind of hard to share some code and pinpoint exact problems. So versus I can just sort of sit down, and to me, that's how I prefer to operate. So, hey, man, you got, like today, actually, I did that. I'm working on this feature that these other guys wrote. I'm trying to sort of add something to it. And I just said, I looked at the code, sort of have a good understanding. There's something I had questions about. I said, hey, man, you got 10 minutes. Can I just chat with you? So to me, that's one way, and I find very effective. You can kind of get your questions answered very, very fast, very rapidly. One thing at Reddit that we really do a lot that I really enjoy, I think is great, is a lot of the teams will have office hours. So we're all used to sort of office hours in school where you go to the professor, go to the TA, and say, hey, help me out. So now, like a lot of the teams, like InfraOps has office hours. This is an example, and they're kind of a real central core of our of Reddit. But, so it's one of those things, whenever you have questions, you can just go there and say, hey, here's my problem. There's usually somebody in the room who can sit down with you and sort of walk you through or answer your questions. And I found it to be invaluable. It's excellent. And I would say other companies should think about doing something similar, because it sucks like sitting there and you're struggling looking at some code. You don't know what the hell it does. You're frustrated. You see these weird messages, error messages or whatever, and you don't know who exactly to go talk to. I mean, yeah, maybe you can look at the Git history, and I've done that too sometimes. Like, hey, who's the last person to touch this file? But sometimes that person is no longer with the company or whatever. So we have this thing called office hours that some teams will hold maybe once or twice or 3 times a week, which is just a great way to get questions answered. And so, yeah, and then of course, for code reviews, we use GitHub. So once you got the point, you're writing your code, you got to get it reviewed and get it sort of approved by a fellow engineer. And so, but I will say I find, GitHub, you got to be careful, like, because I've gotten some really sort of lengthy code reviews that have gotten sort of sprawled out of the initial scope of what the code change is for. So, I mean, it's a great tool to sort of, hey, like, just make sure I'm not screwing up. But if you're sort of confused about what you should be doing in the first place or whatever, GitHub is not the way to go. Code review is not the way to go. It's, either set up an individual meeting or something like that, get your questions answered, write your code, get it tested, and then, your pull request is basically to tighten up, make sure, you're not making any sort of obvious errors or minor improvements to the algorithm that somebody else will sort of let you know about. So, But yeah, I just find in person to me, that's just my way. I like to, let's sit down, let's talk, like, let's just talk this through.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I like that idea for office hours. That's I think that's something that a lot of companies should probably implement. I think one of the challenges with, especially with some some, I wouldn't even say newer companies, but companies period, is that you have a lot of people that work remote.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be challenging. I know it's challenging, for me at times, just as far as, I'm the main, I shouldn't say main, but I'm the DevOps engineer for over a certain product suite. And most of the team members live in a totally different state. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my office, like, I'm the only DevOps engineer for my specific product. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody else, and I mean, software engineers, QA people, the other DevOps engineers, they're all in a totally different in a totally different city. And so what's difficult is that there can be a lot of water cooler talk, right, so to speak, that you're not privy to, right? And those conversations, sometimes a lot of information comes out of those, right? Especially with the software engineers who will walk over to, one of the DevOps engineers' desk and say, "Hey, we're having this issue, blah 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 blah. How do we kind of get around this from an infrastructure standpoint?" And some of those conversations I'm not privy to, and so if the person if the other DevOps engineer is not, kind of forthright with that information, then I never hear it. That's kind of, the impotence of what, why, I kind of asked that question around collaboration and communication and things like that. Excellent. So I want to switch. Well, I want to talk a little bit about research, because I know one of the things when I started my position, it was, how much, you have so much going on day to day, just as far as just regular work, right? And I know people coming into, coming into a job can, when it comes to research, they might not know, like, what's an adequate amount of time to spend kind of researching something, or researching a problem, or just researching anything to try to gain more information. So talk to us a little bit about, how much time are you, spending just research, not coding anything, just kind of looking at, websites or oh man, what's the popular channel or a popular website that a lot of people go to for software?
Stack Overflow.
What's that?
Stack Overflow.
Stack Overflow. Yeah. Right. So how much time do you spend researching, issues and things like that?
I'd definitely say, a couple hours a week. It's well, for a few reasons. For me, this was sort of coming to Reddit was a domain kind of shift. I was doing embedded work. Now I'm sort of in a web space, web services. So for me, there has been definitely a bit of a learning curve. And I would also say, unfortunately, one of our pain points is sort of documentation, and like we've had explosive growth. So there are things that are kind of new code, and our code base is kind of massive. So, a lot of it is just me digging through the code, quite frank, trying to figure out how something works when I'm tracking down a bug or issue, or researching how to do this new feature. Is trying to figure out, well, what's the best way to do it in our code base, the way it's written, the tools that we have. And I would say, honestly, and that's probably, almost more of the bulk of the time. Once you figure out what you got to do, right? Writing the code, get it done, and the test case or whatever isn't that hard, but it's figuring out how to do it the right way. So I would say there's a good chunk of my time that is spent researching, especially with our team, as well as I was kind of telling you, like, we'll get the random, hey, here's some suspicious activity, on the site, can somebody look into it? And that there's no instruction manual on that, right? You see some laws where you get, so somebody from the community says, hey, this is some weird activity. Well, you got to really go through, piece together what's going on, and then look at the code. Is like, why is this happening this way? So yeah, I would say definitely several hours. I don't know if I could put a number on it, but I mean, I would say if I look at per day, I mean, it's definitely going to be, I don't know, 2 to 4 hours or so a day, maybe, give or take. But because I mean, I think when you're in our space, right, we're creating things, right, and so to create something, you got to kind of figure out how to do it. What's the best way to do it? And then, it may be some, I was sort of, I don't consider myself a Python guru, so I started as a C++ kind of developer who shifted to Python. So yeah, there are a lot of things even within Python I just got to figure out how to do because it's a very different language, and so like I said, I live on Stack Overflow,
Right.
and honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great site. It's like there's no point in you scuffling trying to figure out how to do something when somebody told you how to do it,
Right.
And so but yeah, I think research. I spend a good amount of time in researching and I'm learning new stuff all the time within our own code base, quite frankly, as well as just how to do things in general. So I would just tell people that it's a very important skill. That's the thing about engineering is you got to solve problems, and it's there is no sort of here's the book. Like you got to kind of come up with solutions. So how you do that? You got to get out there and dig and research, and you're going to encounter some tools and some things that you may not have used before, and so you got to kind of figure that out. So I say a good bulk of the time is doing research, teaching yourself.
And I think that's important for people to know, simply because coming into a job, it's pretty intimidating, right? And what you don't want is the feeling that you have to know the answer. It's just right off the bat. Like it should, like nobody knows everything in technology. And, I kind of asked that question because I kind of want people to understand that it's okay not to know. But what's not okay is if you fail to try to find out. Right. And so the best thing you can do is take some time out and research a problem. Don't, say, hey, I don't know, but I can go and find out. That the whole question about research is just to get it that, the core of, hey, it's okay to spend, because some people they'll feel that, if you're not there, clacking on your keyboard for 8 hours straight, like a mad person, then you're not doing your job. Right. And it's good to know, or let people know that, if you're sitting there and you're reading up on how to do something on Stack Overflow, or you're Googling something, and really, technology changes all the time. And especially with me, working in with AWS constantly, like AWS puts out new features like every day, right? Like in order to keep up with that, you have to take some time out in order to read the white papers and read whatever new announcements they have. And so it takes some time. So it's good to know, let people know that, hey, research is okay during your day to day. Take some time out and research and find out how to solve issues. So excellent.
Just to piggyback on that, I mean, to me, that is what being an engineer is. The difference between being an engineer versus sort of maybe for lack of a better phrase, just a pure coder, whatever. You're the one you're researching, you're putting together, you're architecting things, right? And that requires research. We could, a lot of companies do this, right? You could have, I've seen it in other code bases where you can tell somebody basically, formulated, architected this system, whatever, and then they send it off to India or wherever and have them just code it up, because it's cheaper. So to me, like if you're a true engineer, you're a problem solver, you're an architect, you're a developer, and that requires research. You're creating something brand new. And, so a lot of times to do that, you got to figure out what's the best way and what's the best tools. How do we do this? And that requires reading, and problem solving. Yeah. It's not about how much code can I crank out in this, in this day. That's honestly a very poor metric, if anything. So, and I think any boss who's like, I don't see you coding enough is that's probably somebody you should work for. You should find another manager.
I agree. Let's talk about career progression. And one of the first things I want to touch on is how do you stay sharp? Right? As an engineer, there's always a constant barrage of information, new information being put out all the time. So and so when it comes to like the type of websites you go to, the books you read, maybe skill challenges in order to keep your skills up to par. Tell us give us some of those the websites or some of the books that you read in order to stay sharp.
We definitely try to follow some, sites and blogs. Just, I mean, some are just honestly general technology. One of my favorites is Engadget. That's just sort of, they kind of cover everything, but the idea is that you kind of know what's sort of, what's popular, what's going on, whether it's electronics, whether it's software, whatever. I mean, Slashdot, I used to read it a good bit, not as much these days, but, and let's see, what else? In terms of books, there's a really good book for software. It's Code Complete. They just put out this Microsoft engineer. He's one like kind of legendary sort of like software sort of engineering manager, and it really kind of talks to you about like how to write good code. I mean, there are a million ways to write code, right? But there are better ways than others, and so that's a good book as well. Let's see what else. I mean, obviously, yeah, I mean, I don't like necessarily peruse Stack Overflow, but it's definitely a good resource to, you're like, well, how do I do this in Python or whatever? That's one I sort of learned a lot from, just from, encountering my own problems and whatnot. And then I did, what is this site? Coursera. So my whole career has basically been back end. And I kind of wanted to learn some front end, learn some JavaScript. And they had a course, and it's totally free. If you, as long as you don't want the little credit or whatever, they had it's like a whole like 5-course series that was kind of a JavaScript kind of a back end. So yeah, I sort of learned JavaScript that way. And Coursera, I think, is a great way. You can do these little courses that are at your own pace. They give you assignments, and so it's so I learned sort of JavaScript and Express, kind of that way. Node.js, I should say, is kind of and so. But yeah, Coursera has a lot of good stuff. So there are definitely other resources as well. It's just the one that I use, and I think pretty soon I'm going to maybe pick up another course. My goal is to sort of learn some more front end, and so. But and if you just want some basics, like even Khan Academy is pretty good. They're not super heavy on like the software stuff, but there's some like good kind of basics or things you maybe want to brush up on, and figure out, and then. Again, if you're interviewing, I said those sites that I was telling you about, LeetCode and InterviewBit, they're great sites to sort of help you sort of refresh on your skills and your data structures and things like that. So,
excellent.
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely second Coursera. The thing I like a lot about Coursera is that it's at least the courses I've taken are all instructor-led courses, right? So they have the videos, and then they have the instructors actually demonstrating whatever topic or whatever certain thing they're talking about, and then at the end of that, whatever the video. They always present you with these kind of challenges, and you can do them all in a web browser, right? You don't have to have a computer with an IDE installed or anything like that. And they give you little tips. Some of them they give you little tips on kind of what, but they always tell you kind of like what they're looking for, like the output. And then you just have to write the code. And the good thing about it, it's not like, oh, you have to write the code like this. All they're looking for is the correct output. But the thing that really, like I said, that I really like about it is the fact I'm more of a person kind of explaining things to me and seeing it as well, or kind of like I like instructor-led type things, right? That's why I like classroom environments. And so for people like who like that type of environment, it's really good. I know I tried what's the one Code Academy, I think. Okay. Yeah, and it didn't work for me nearly as well as Coursera did. So excellent.
Good. I like that. The course I did. Yeah, you had like 5 or 6 assignments. Yeah, you end up building your own like website. You really back end, but it was cool. It was challenges that at the end of the day, I had this project. I learned a lot about JavaScript and Node.js that I didn't know before, and I like that because this one was like very project based, and I kind of like that because to me it's kind of a good way to learn. So yeah, Coursera was a great resource. And yeah, you can just go at your own pace, and you pay if you want the certification, you can pay, but if you don't, it's the same material if you just want to learn and teach yourself. So
excellent. So staying on the topic of career progression, you've been at Reddit for going on a couple of years now.
No, Reddit. No, I've only been here like 10 months. I
Oh,
started
10
in March.
months. Okay.
Before that, I was yeah. So I'm still fairly new here, but
Okay.
I can't believe it's been months. It's crazy.
Okay, so
Yeah.
and you probably seen people come in and either yourself or someone else kind of move up the ladder. So if you could give us a little insight onto kind of how do you navigate and move up that, say, go from a junior dev person to a senior engineer.
Good question. I would say there are probably two main things. I think one is we have this whole career ladders document and whatnot, and I think I kind of see it to be true, which is I guess we have our different levels. I'm a software engineer 3 as we categorize it. And the next level is senior engineer, and I think the main difference is like to make senior, they want to kind of see that you sort of become sort of the expert of a certain piece of the code, or if you will, the code base. Like you're sort of the expert, you're the owner of it. I think more junior level is like, here's some bugs, here's some minor features, whatever. But in theory, anybody could have done those and whatnot. But I think that step becoming senior is that you have kind of created and crafted something, done a design doc on it, got it approved, got the sign off, implemented it, got it tested, got it out in production in the wild, and you're sort of the go-to person for that. And I think that's kind of what they like to see. And of course, the more of those things you do, the more valuable sort of you become and whatnot. But I think the big thing is being an owner of sort of the subject matter expert of a certain part of the code base is one thing. Then another one, our VP engineering, Nick, what he likes to say is that like there are all kinds of problems, right, that are throughout the organization, right, and basically kind of complaining about a problem without presenting a solution. Raising a problem without kind of trying to raise a solution is just kind of complaining, right? So his thing is kind of like, you should, take ownership and try to, find solutions. So if you see something that's the matter, just, there's something going wrong, it's one thing to complain about. It's another thing to say, here's a possible solution. I'm going to do this. I'm going to, take on that responsibility. And so I think that's the other way. When you do that, and you show that, I think that's what sort of upper management really looks for, at least here, but I think a lot of organizations as well. It's really showing that initiative and, saying, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to be the go-to person. I'll get it done. And not just sort of sit there and complain about things and wait for work to kind of fall your way. I think that's sort of the kind of how you make it to the next level there. So.
Excellent. And do you have a mentor? And if so, kind of tell us, how important are they to your career?
Good question. So actually, I'm going to say I actually do not. That's one of my goals for this year. So I have Reddit just rolled out a mentorship program. I actually have a meeting with my new mentor on Friday. Nice. I'm actually kind of excited about that because I feel like it's I've learned a lot here, but I've definitely struggled some. And I think having somebody who's a little more senior is going to be great. Somebody I can kind of lean on. Well, kind of the way we did have sort of an onboarding buddy who was, I guess, sort of an unofficial mentor in the beginning. But we're starting our formal mentorship program here internally. Also, kind of outside of Reddit, there's this group that I was, given the pleasure to join. I'll be starting in January called Dev Color, which is about sort of promoting, not just African American people of color, kind of helping kind of promote, give us sort of resources, people to sort of, you can bounce ideas off of problems and issues and how to navigate that. So you have your squad, who basically is kind of, they put you in these small groups called the squad, and then the goal is, as a squad, you learn from each other. So I'm really excited. I have a good friend of mine from undergrad who he raves about the organization, and also Nick, our VP engineering, he raves about it as well. And so so to be honest, that's sort of been my goal. I feel like when I was in San Diego, I didn't really have that mentor figure that I knew it was kind of lacking. And so I'm excited to sort of really develop that. I think it's going to really be a huge factor in sort of my career. So
Gotcha,
I wish I could say I had one for a while, but the truth is I just really, I think, this will be big for me. So I'm all for it.
Excellent. Yeah, and big up to Dev Color. I know there's some members of the Bit Slack group that rave about Dev Color and the work that they're doing, and I think I heard about them maybe a year or two ago. And you know, seems like they're doing incredible work. And I really like the fact that, you know, that more communities like this are popping up, and I think that's going to be vital to us as a community going forward. Just, you know, what do they say? Steel sharpens steel, or iron sharpens iron, or one of the two. And I think that's going to be the way that, you know, we really start moving the needle forward, is coming together as a community, sharing knowledge with each other, sharing experiences, and helping each other solve challenges and things like that. So big up to them and all the work that they're doing. I got a couple more questions before we get out of here.
Yeah.
You know, in the section that I call words of advice, right? Some parting words of advice. So I had a few questions here, but you know, we're already going over an hour, so I just want to touch on a couple of these. How important is the resume, and tell us a little bit about kind of what makes a resume impressive or kind of stand out to you.
Sure. I would say it is definitely important. It's not the end all be all, but you got to remember, I mean, when a recruiter, you know, you come across, that's the first thing they see, right? So if it, you know, the resume looks a little, you know, you get to that phone screen, you know, even that initial call, the phone screen. So I will say it's definitely important. I would say don't worry. I wouldn't get so caught up about where you went to school and all that. That doesn't really matter as much, at least here. Some companies, you know, maybe, but Reddit, you know, we're really looking just for good people. And we've hired from boot camps, you know, we've hired from people from all different, you know, kind of educational backgrounds and whatnot. But I think the main thing, you do need to have, you know, demonstrate on the resume that, you know, you've got, you know, technical skills and that you've done technical projects. So if you just right out of school, you know, I would say, you know, you want to list some of those classes that you've done, maybe some projects you've done, like you can share them on your GitHub or whatever, have a link on your resume so that people can see. I remember when I first came out of grad school, I mean, obviously I didn't have a ton of practical experience. So I listed the courses that I had taken that looked interesting, you know, databases and algorithms and, you know, database algorithms, data structures, things like that. And then of course, as you kind of, you know, matriculate through your professional career, then you kind of replace that with jobs and here are the roles that I've done. So, I think, I mean, I guess there's two ways to kind of look at it. You can be, some people have a very narrow career path, so you want to just show that sort of depth there. Or if you are kind of full stack and done a lot, you know, you want to show some breadth there that, you know, yes, I know HTML, I know JavaScript, I know sort of some backend language, Python or whatever, and, you know, I know SQL or MongoDB or whatever it is. So, but yeah, the resume needs to sort of show, you know, if you just sort of you say, I want to be a developer and, you know, I just, you know, haven't really done much of anything. I don't have anything to kind of show you. You will sort of maybe get outshone by other people who, you know, have done some stuff, worked on some open source or whatever. So resume is important. I would say not as much as where you went to school, but showing technical projects. If you got a good GPA, show it. You know, I'd say kind of, you know, just like you're playing spades, right? You know, leave those strong cards. So leave is what your strengths. You know, if you know, for me, I was very fortunate. I did very well at Georgia Tech. Now I was, and GPA is one of them, so I put that on there. You know what I mean? But if you have some really good open source experience, some things on GitHub side projects, lead with that. You know, so lead with your strengths, and you know the recruiters will see that. And I think I don't know. I guess maybe you go a little back and forth with this, but you know, there's some people who say, well, if you just bounce around too much, then you sort of look like, you know, will you stay? For me, I think I've been roughly 2.5 years. Is sort of that's kind of been my mark. So I mean, I think it's good to show that, you know, if you go somewhere that you kind of are committed, you know, somewhat. But and then like you got to do what you got to do. So, but I think the big thing is showing your technical expertise. Make sure you highlight that. Put that at the top. You know, that these are my languages and whatnot, you know, and you know, the eye-catching stuff needs to go at the top. That's what the recruiter, you know, they spend roughly a handful of seconds, a few seconds on your resume usually, before they decide to discard it. So leave with that stuff that's if it's your grades, leave with those. If it's your projects, leave with those. And if it's your work history, sort of make sure that that's up there at the top. You got some good comments on the resume. And then the other stuff that, it's good to have, you can sort of, maybe keep more towards the bottom, I would say. So.
Gotcha. And kind of tying into that, I have one more question after this question. So how important is the candidate's web presence? Like, what sites should, or should they have a GitHub? Should they be on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn for sure, because that's the first thing recruiters go look for. Even as an interviewer, like I didn't even bring the lead in, but they give us a little packet, kind of here's the candidate. First thing I do is go to LinkedIn. I mean, if nothing else, it gives me something to talk about with the candidate and kind of see, how senior they are. So you need to have your LinkedIn on point. Not even just for, it helps just for people reaching out. I can't tell you how many times I get some recruit on LinkedIn hit me up all the time. So you need to have that tight. I definitely have seen, like, again, candidates that have come through and they'll have on their resume, here's GitHub, here's some project I did. I'll go sort of look at it, see what it's about, read up on it. Again, as a conversational piece of nothing else. And then, sometimes I'll note that, hey, they said they did this. I kind of took a look at it, and, so I would say, I mean, GitHub is not end all be all. Like, I would say even mine, if you go look today, I don't have a ton of stuff on there. So it's not end all be all, but it does help, especially, let's say you may not have the greatest grades or whatever, but you've done all this cool stuff. If you have that GitHub and they see that, they'd be like, wow, so I think it's important, but to me, LinkedIn is probably most important. Have that up to date, have that tight. But yeah, definitely any other information that can glean for you outside of a resume. So GitHub, you've got coding samples already there for them to see, so they can see, oh, okay, well, this person is look at this is pretty cool, that thing that they've been working on. And, it shows that you sort of have this sort of a drive to, it really shows you really like developing, you like coding, you like making things, and you're not just one of those people who just does whatever I'm told. That no, I have some self ambition, and so I think it's good. But yeah, so
excellent. And last but not least, before we get out of here, what are some do's and don'ts that people should be aware of, like things that you've seen either before or after an employee has been hired, that you're just like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, or hey, we should have more candidates do this?
Let's see. I guess so. You're talking about before they've been hired. I guess
either or.
Yeah, I'll go on the interview phase. I mean, number one is like, number one is just preparation. I mean, I can't hammer on that enough, that you got to prepare. But even beyond that, it's make sure that I mean, at Reddit, one of the things that we look for, I'm sure a lot of other companies look for, is that, are you somebody that we think we can get along with you? So, just be personable, be nice, be talkative also is a big thing. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in an interview, you're going through the interview and the candidate just sort of clams up, they're quiet, and just have an engaging conversation, and you're getting like 1 or 2 word answers or whatever. It's like, we have these other whole criteria that's non-technical that I'm evaluating on you as well.
Yeah.
And so if you just don't really give me much, you don't talk to me, you got to talk to, but like, if you got to give me something so that I can say, okay, maybe they didn't do so hot on this technical part, but man, they are so great over here, and they really explained very well this project they worked on, and it's a really challenging project, and me fully. So you got to be able to communicate. That's something that we're always looking for. There are a lot of smart people out there, right? But can you work with all of them is a different question. So you need to be able to convey that. And then I guess after you get hired, I mean, let me think. I mean, the big thing is just sort of do what you say you're going to do. Don't let your deadline slip. If there's problems, you need to sort of voice that with your manager so they know. We all want to work, and kind of to segue to what I was saying earlier, be a good coworker, be a thoughtful coworker. You have stuff to do, but so do they. So, nice about how you ask, and because we all rely on each other, but you don't want to be that guy who's just like so inconsiderate and, sort of yelling at people when they're not, doing your stuff that you need done, things like that. So, yeah. I mean, I guess those are the main ones that sort of come to mind.
Excellent. Last but not least, for people who want to get in contact with you or want to chat with you, kind of give us, kind of your Twitter handles, things like that.
Sure. So I'm happy to throw out email, everything, doesn't matter. So again, my name is Kevin Dious. So my email is kevin.dious@reddit.com. Feel free to hit me up. My username is the_other_KDOT. The other K dot is my username. It's a nickname I got, K dot, and Kendrick is the big K dot, so I'm the other K dot, I guess. Feel free to hit me up on Reddit if you're a Redditor. I mean, I'm basically KDIOUS at anything online. I'm like the only one, so you can just put in Kevin DIOUS and you'll find stuff. And via email, that's fine. My Twitter is the other K dot. The Instagram is the other K dot. You know, whatever. So it's real easy to find me there. And yeah, again, Kevin.dious@reddit.com. We're hiring.
Yes.
We need people. Please,
yes.
Please. I need another 4 or 5 people alone. Please.
Okay.
If you're a developer, I'll be happy. There's a guy do mock interviews with you or whatever. You know what I'm saying, to help you out before you come up. I mean, we need people. Love to have you, especially, you know, us Blacks in Technology. We really are trying, you know, and they're really making a good effort. Diversity and inclusion is a really core tenet. I cannot say it enough. We need you. We want you. Please come to Reddit. Please apply. So, yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, Kevin, I really appreciate you taking the time out to answer mostly all of the questions that I had. I know we ran out of time, but I appreciate you answering the questions that we had up here, and definitely wish you the best of luck in your career. And next time I'm out in San Fran, I'll definitely ping you.
Great. And I just say I'm honored to glad you thought to have me on. I'm very honored, and it's a great show, great concept, and please keep doing it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take care.